gearheads, thanks for tuning in. On this episode of Dance Garage, we are going to be replacing the bushings in the trailing arms and the seal on the rear end of the Chevelle. Let's see how that's done. Hey Dan, run that intro!
Alright guys, so to get started, I gotta turn this thing around, get it in the garage, pull the rear end out, and then we'll continue on from there. Alright, so I got the rear end out. I did take it out with the control arms because it just made more sense to take it out that way. When I put the new bushings in the control arms, I'm going to put them back in the car first. That way when I put the rear end back in, it's a lot easier to access these lower bolts. I did have to connect the brake lines and the emergency brakes as well. So I'm going to get started by taking off these control arms, putting the new bushings in them, and then we'll go ahead and find what seal needs to be on the front of this, and then we'll go ahead and finish up by taking off the back. Just double checking the gears, make sure everything's alright, and then we'll go ahead and put it back together. Well, there you go, it pops, but it works. Hey guys, so here's where I'm at. I got all the control arms out. I got the bushings all pressed out of them. I used my handy dandy Harbor Freight press, and some of them, as you can see, are really dirty. So I did decide to clean these up and paint them, unlike the front suspension, because I have a little more time now, and these are really gross. So I cleaned them up, and here's one that I got painted. I just hung it from a tree in the backyard and painted it so it looks a little better. So I'm going to go ahead and press this bearing in, and I took them off the car with the rear end, but I'm going to put them back on the car and then slide the rear end in, and I'll be able to hook them up a little bit easier. I also have the pinion yoke off, and I got the seal out, so I'm going to show you putting that back in. We're going to put some bearings back on these, clean them, paint them, and get everything back together. So let's continue on our way. These will definitely look better when I'm done. That's a lot of junk to come off of a control arm. So, here's the trick to installing these without crushing them. Just use some sockets as spacers. This one's actually going in real easy, because I did the same thing. I put this in the freezer for a little while. That one actually worked real nice. Oh, look at that, there's a seal. Alright, so this is what I've done to protect it from anything getting in there. Of course, I moved something that was holding up the wheels from moving, and this whole thing rotated around, so the bearing fell out, and all the fluid fell out, but I'm changing the fluid anyway, so it's not a big deal. So the bearing looks good. I think I had this rear rebuilt about 12 years ago, I want to say. So I think we'll be good to put it back together. Nothing looks worn. So we're going to go ahead and slide that back in. center that up, and then we'll get this new seal in and press it on, and then at least that'll keep anything else from getting in here. And then I'll go ahead and put the yoke on and torque it. Then I can rotate it around and we'll work on cleaning it up a little bit more. Alright, so this is the right seal. I think this is why it was leaking. I hope it's why it was leaking, so I'm going to go ahead and tap this in gently, see if I can get it started and just knock it in. Now this may or may not work. If it doesn't work, I'm going to try and get a, I don't have a bearing press or a seal press tool that would go around this and equally be able to hit it with pressure. If this doesn't work, I'm going to go ahead and get a big socket and see what happens. Because it probably won't. Alright, that worked. This has a real nice lip, and I don't know if you could hear, but when I hit and had the seal all the way down, you heard that metal against metal sound. So that tells you when it's seated. So just look, make sure it's seated all the way around. And this actually seals against the drive shaft yoke that'll go on this. Alright, so we're just going to put the yoke back in. From what I could tell, there is no particular way this goes back on. Bottoms out pretty easily. And then we'll just clean up this washer and the bolt, clean up the washer and the nut, and get it back on there, and then we'll torque it down. The torques I found were pretty light. They were like something inch-pounds, so I'm going to double check that and make sure it's right. And we'll have this locked on. Then I'm going to clean up this rear end a little bit. We'll flip it over to get these other bushings out. I did have to rent a tool from Advance to get these bushings out because I can't put this whole rear axle in my press. So I want to do that so I can return that. Alright guys, so I'm going to press these bushings in and out, press these out and press the new ones in. Now some of these have a lip and that centers it on here. I don't think the new ones do, so I was just going to measure it and kind of see where it's at. It's about a ½ inch out on either side pretty much. So we'll just go ahead and press the new ones in and make sure that they're about a ½ inch on either side. Now I did get the tool from Advance. Again, you can rent these for free. You basically buy them on your credit card. They give you a full refund when you drop it off. And obviously I can't put the rear end in the press, so this just goes right on here with the cups. Press it in and out really easily. Right tool for the right job, so let's watch along. Alright, so you can see where this is here. So this is on the outside of the bushing, so it's going to push it into this cup and should release it right out. I may have to change this to a smaller cup, but this will get us started. So I got the bushing out. You can check inside your race here and make sure that's all clean. And got a little trick for you on pressing the new ones in easier. Put the new bushings in the freezer for a little while. I've had these in for a couple days because it's taken me a while to get back out here to working on it. But if you put these in the freezer for a couple days, the cold will contract them. It will make it a lot easier to get them in, and also help them getting pressed in easier. And these, you can kind of see, do have the little lip here, so it tells you exactly where it's going to go in. It'll press to this shoulder, and then it'll stop. On the control arms and everything, where it has to go all the way through, it's not a problem. Once you figure out what's going to work, you just get it straightened up as best as you can, then go ahead and press it in. Obviously, it's only going to go in a little bit here, but once it gets in, I'll have a little bit more room here to put a cup on it and get it seated. Or so I think. Since it's going to be hard to see, especially once it's getting closer, I'm going to actually draw a line right here on the shoulder. So I know when that gets close, that's about where it needs to be pressed in all the way. And of course, I'll measure it as well. There it goes. Once it centers up, it should go in a little bit easier. There you go. Okay, so as you see, sometimes you have to get a little creative. I just used a BFH to go ahead and pound this in. If you could see, there's not a whole lot of room in between the pumpkin and the bushing here, so I wouldn't have been able to get any of these in here anyway, and or been able to get it out. So with the bushing being in the freezer, that definitely cooled it down. If you need to, you can actually heat up the metal too. Cold metal going into hot metal, you know how that works, and make it go in a little bit easier. Also, a little bit of grease or some WD-40 helps it slide in. So now these are done, we're going to go ahead and continue on. So the first thing I'm going to do is attach the lower control arms, and then that will at least square it up, and then I'll be able to lift it up a little bit. I'll attach the upper control arms, and then I'm going to leave it as low as possible to attach the brake lines, and then we'll go ahead and attach the springs and the shocks, and then lift it up, and then we'll be able to get the drive shaft attached, and then we'll go ahead and bleed the brakes, put the wheels and tires back on, be ready to go. Sometimes what you may have to do is try to get these holes aligned. You can use drift pins that are a little smaller than the bolts, that way it'll go in easier and kind of help you straighten everything out. Or may have to just get the bolts started on one end, and then once everything is squared up, the bolt should go right through. You'll be able to get the nuts on, lock washers, and anything else you need. And then of course we'll have to torque everything when we're done. Alright, so this is pretty much the easy part, the shocks and the springs. The springs do have the end of the spring here, which does have to sit in the pocket in the top, so you do have to rotate that to get it in the right position. And the bottom, you just have this plate that also has a certain way it needs to sit down in there, and that'll bolt in. And then the shocks here just bolt down on the end, so these are pretty easy. What I recommend doing is bolting in the springs loose, and then when you jack it up and it gets into the pocket, you can go ahead and tighten it up. I recommend leaving everything loose until you get it up and everything is where it needs to be and seated correctly, and then go ahead and tighten and torque down all the bolts. Test drive, take one.
Currently, and I want him to take that to the store to help get decorated. Wait, I just put my nut. His beautiful wife Teresa. He just turned.
The car stopped.
What do you mean?
Well, we just bled the brakes last night, and we needed to make sure the car was going to stop. Now, he wanted to test it out here in the garage, but I would not approve that, because if he runs the car in the garage, the whole house smells like exhaust, upstairs smells like exhaust.
Yeah, so I had to give him a push, literally.
So I told him, use the emergency brake if it doesn't work, right?
Here he comes.
And if in case we have an emergency, I have an emergency brake.
And a fire extinguisher for your seat.
So, test drive is complete, brakes are working. The pedal does go down pretty far, so I either need a master or I just need to adjust the shoes. But we'll make it for the 4th of July parade tomorrow, be able to lead all the neighborhood kids. So I say this one's in the bag.
Well, that's it for this episode. You can leave comments below, give this video a thumbs up, and make notifications when new videos are uploaded.
Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay positive, keep on wrenching. Come on, light. Ow. There you go. Don't hit the camera. Alright guys, so I'm attempting to video this stuff, but it apparently is not working. And it says it's working, but nothing is moving on the screen. So tell me what you think. Is it working or not? Oh no. Camera's not working again. Now these are done, we're going to go ahead and continue on. But actually I'm going to take a break because I'm hot and sweaty.
How do I stop recording?
I hit the record button.
Right here?
Yeah.
You weren't recording?
No, you nitwit.
And you guys are the best. My dad loves you guys so much. You're the best fans. Alice in Wonderland. How do you get to Wonderland? Over the hill or on the land, or just behind the tree?